Hi, how's it going? Just want to let you know that I had my first spiritual awakening when I was 21, and basically I was exiting out of orange, and the extreme state from orange to green and yellow is so traumatic for the psyche, especially a psyche as in the longer you stay in orange, the more the traumatic transition to green will be. Meaning, if you were in orange, but you're being concentrated in blue, forced into blue, then once you escape blue, the transfer to orange is going to be intense, and once you escape orange, the transfer to green and yellow is going to be intense. But during those moments, you're transferring so fast, what tends to happen is there's a dissolution of the ego, and there's a lost period where you're not adjusted. So you may get temporary supernatural powers, temporary psychic abilities, temporary incredible amounts of wisdom that you cannot fathom in human language. You cannot describe in the way this takes place or why this takes place. You can just use poetry, metaphors to describe what takes place during these periods. But what I noticed is something that might be stage choral. Basically, since that day, I've been getting itches over here. Okay, itches over here, and of course the regular stuff like this, but that's every human. But I've been getting itches that monkeys have, right? So you might say what happened was I descended into madness and I became an animal. But really what I discovered is that stage coral is a new species. It's a tier 3, which means you're from tier 1 to tier 2, which is on yellow. You have an expanded understanding of the world. Like, you feel enlightened. And many people feel like a click. They feel like everything makes sense. Like, there's a whole order to things. And many people have enlightenment experiences in yellow, and they can transition more easily to higher stages. But the feeling of elatedness is because it's such a drastic change. But stage turquoise, it's really, yeah. That's why spiral dynamics integral might be more accurate, because it's not linear and the stages are probably set up more accurately. But basically, more or less, applying to spiral dynamics, from turquoise to coral, you become a different species. You are now re-entering into your primal functions, but from an intellectual level, meaning you've transcended to the point where your base, your feet, right, which represent the physical, you've now transferred to the head, which represents the intellect. And consciousness has expanded where you can now be aware of your own self. And what you're going to have is, throughout like the next tiers, you're just going to have more and more awareness about your own thought patterns, your own psyche, your own thinking about your own thinking. And like Al Watts joked about this process when he said, but who's watching the watcher? Who's watching the watcher, or something like that. He does this a lot because it's counterintuitive. Like, you always think you have the rest. You always think you have the full picture, and then there's always more. So he's poking fun of that phenomenon where you can't pinpoint the ultimate seer of everything. Even if you are aware that you're watching yourself from above or all angles, who's that? Who's watching them? Is it you? It's an awareness that it comes out of thin air, and it doesn't make any sense. So what I'm saying is that as you advance in consciousness, the amount of conscious awareness about states of consciousness, about your own mind, about your own thinking patterns, about your own intellect, about the watcher, like your own soul, is what they say in religious dogma. You be aware of what your own soul is thinking versus what you're thinking as a body, as an animal. So that's kind of the territory we're entering into, where I'm scratching my head more often because I'm beige. I'm like an animal, but an animal of intellect. So when I scratch, I don't scratch to figure out where am I going to get my next food. Because the way I understand it is the monkey scratch is not just for fleas, which is an aspect to it. I scratched even before I had long hair, and I also scratch over here, and I have no hair over there, basically. Well, here is because of the the baggage from awakening and not fully integrating it. So basically, I've taken rage into my coral. You don't have to take rage into your coral, but it could be why coral's taking a long time, because I have to deal with my rage first. And rage manifests strongly in coral because it's a masculine stage where it becomes more noticeable. So you're kind of forced into dealing with it, and you're not afraid to deal with it because you know that's your stage. But that's one of the reasons why I have this here. But what is baggage? It's sifting through your intellect. It's trying to process information. And that's why I think, so I don't think everyone's going to have to be scratching their heads like monkeys and all that. But what could happen for some people is who've quickly transferred up the spiral, but they haven't adjusted to their new state of being. And they're going to get these itches that, the animals would get. Because it's a mechanism that's the new species. You're going back to your primal days, and once you become comfortable in the higher stage and you get a community, right? Because you don't have a community yet in stage beige, because we're all scattered around the world. We're all alone. No one, we don't know where each other is. We'll have to find each other, and by that point we'll probably already be entering into teal. And we'll find each other, and then we'll feel a sense of community. And teal, I don't know if teal is parallel to stage purple or parallel to stage whatever stage it might parallel to, but I do know that it's a step forward, and it's a big step forward to the point where we can manage all the knowledge that coral's trying to use from turquoise. We're trying to funnel all this information, all this wisdom into this little body, and that adjustment is just like, well, how the F do we do that? You know what? We need a community. So we get out and get a community to do that, and that's going to be in stage teal when we're involved in that. So the scratch in my head, I don't know if it's going to go into stage teal, but I imagine when my intellect expands, so will my biological functions, because it kind of moves with each other. So I really feel like I'm the prototype for stage coral, because once coral finds a community, they're already a healthy stage coral, like it's a healthy stage coral, but also a healthy stage beige, reciprocal, meaning you won't even notice that they're a parallel to beige because their animal nature is not present. But before you find the community, that's like comparable to early stage beige, where there's a lot of paranoia about survival, like who should you trust, and that kind of is very difficult. Usually they marry into the family, right? Incest, because that's the only way to survive. And once you get into stage teal, I imagine, then it becomes more familiar territory. So that's just a heads up that beige will be having biological differences in their anatomy, and this explains perfectly why people were sent to mental hospitals who were geniuses. And stage orange calls stage coral geniuses, and red, by the way, which is interesting. Red and orange are similar. They both call stage coral, if they understand partly what they're talking about, and in their minds they're proven right over and over again, they'll call them geniuses, but that's precisely why they're geniuses, because they're mentally disturbed. So it's not that you're mentally disturbed, it's as you advance, you regain the same stuff over and over again. It's the same process of expansion, of isolation, of not being understood, and so on. And coming together, and then branching out, and coming together, and branching out, and it's a pattern, but there's always higher and higher levels of integration of other stages, of understanding of other stages, which means that as you go up, you're probably going to go faster and faster. Because once you hit tier 2, you already understand there's a spiral. So you understand that consciousness is infinite, and that patterns must be infinite. So therefore, you may hit a white light pattern, but even I say, once everyone's white light and everyone's thinking in terms of, then there's going to be a pattern within that. It just never ends. It'll be a very high state of consciousness where we don't have egos, and we under probably psychic abilities left and right, like we don't even need to speak anymore, which means we'll probably evolve out of speaking. Probably won't need tongues anymore. But by that point, there'll be other stages. It just goes on and on. And this also plays into a coral idea that I've thought of in stage turquoise, is that biological evolution is directly parallel and interdependent with and conditioned upon what goes on in your psychological evolution, meaning the psychology plays a huge role in your biology. So I'm happy I get these weird itches that make me look crazy, because then I make me look animalistic, because it reminds me that this is a new phase in development that no one understands. It's a new creature. Who's gonna understand this except someone who's very smart? That's it. That covers it.